All right, it is time for today's mini sermon, and we have got a lot to do together. We are celebrating the fourth week of Advent, and we're celebrating Christmas together. So get out your good old fashioned pen and paper or your notes app, and let's dive in. You ready? Let's go. All right, so first up, those of us who identify as Protestants, give us a little react wherever you're worshiping with us today. Whether you're on Facebook Live, Zoom, or here in GatherTown, give us a little react if you identify as Protestant. That normally means most of us who are not Roman Catholic or Eastern Orthodox. Now, I want you to raise your hand to do a little bit of self-reflection here because we Protestants have some things to apologize for. Specifically, for our traditions, many of us Protestants have undervalued Mary. A lot of us Protestants have undervalued Mary. Can we get a hashtag patriarchy in this virtual church? A lot of Protestant churches, unlike our Roman Catholic or Eastern Orthodox traditions, have undervalued the role of Mary in our faith. And so while our Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox siblings revere Mary and they honor her and her role in the Christian faith, many of our Protestant traditions are often so put off by their worship of Mary because it seems totally strange to us that we almost tend to ignore Mary altogether. I want you to think about it for a second. What role does Mary play in your own personal faith? Is she simply a womb in the story about Jesus? Is she simply necessary material? Or is she a full person? Does Mary have something to say from her own experiences, some message to share with her own voice, not simply as material in someone else's story? In Luke's gospel, which we read today, Mary is not only an instrument in someone else's story, Mary has something of her own to say. She is an active, consenting participant in the unfolding salvific story. Mary's Magnificat, which we read today from Luke 1, is a revolutionary text. Mary says in this Magnificat from Luke 1, God has scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts. God has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. God has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty-handed. Now, I don't know about you, but it doesn't get any more revolutionary than that, bringing down the powerful from their thrones and lifting up the lowly, filling the hungry, the physically, economically poor, not just with spiritual goodness, but with material goodness, with food for the hungry, and sending the rich away empty. Mary's words are nothing short of revolutionary. She understands the deeply transformative power of love, and not just a sentimental, hallmarky Christmas time love, but a world transforming love that she chose to participate in and perpetuate. In verse 38, Mary speaks back to the angel when the angel tells her what is to happen. Mary doesn't just receive the angel's message, she responds and participates and consents to being an active part in this story, which is unique to this gospel account. In verse 38, Mary says, "Here I am, the servant of the Lord. Let it be with me according to your word." I consent to participate in this narrative. So Mary has an active, consenting participation in the salvific story of this season. Now, as we continue on in the story, we turn to her child, to Jesus of Nazareth, and his queer existence. In Transforming the Bible and the Lives of Transgender Christians, author Austin Harkey writes that it might seem daunting to a congregation to have to learn about pronouns, or to designate a bathroom gender neutral, or to have difficult conversations about what it means to affirm LGBTQIA+ identities. But transgender people are not a burden for Christianity, Harkey writes, or for the church. They come bearing gifts, end quote. Transgender people are not a burden for Christianity or for the church. They come bearing gifts, and we know that to be true here in Church of the Young Prophets. Can we get an amen? Each of you is a gift to this community and the communities where you worship, even when you are told you are a burden, or it is implied that you in your fullness are a burden. You are a gift, and we treasure you. Could you imagine if Jesus was born today? Some folks would be so burdened by trying to figure out his identities that they would fail to recognize the gift of his presence. Binary thinking, which we've been deconstructing this entire Queering Advent series, binary thinking wouldn't allow us to recognize Jesus in his fullness. We'd be forced to answer the binary questions of, is he divine or is he human? Is he Joseph's son or is he God's son? Is he a king or a servant? If he's fully divine and fully human, then which bathroom should he use? Is there a divine bathroom or a human bathroom? Is there something in between? Could he compete in human sports or just the divine ones? It's not fair that his trans body was crucified, since he clearly had an advantage on the rest of us. He would have had to fit into the binary identity boxes of our society. Or he'd risk having his identity, his fullness, his personhood, and his healthcare legislated away. And a related queer question with this whole birth narrative: what does virginity even mean if one's already given birth? Now, it may seem daunting for a community to have to learn about Christology, our doctrines about Christ, and its many controversies, or to have difficult conversation about what it means to affirm Jesus in his fullness. But Jesus is not a burden for Christianity or the church. He is a gift. It may seem daunting for us to have these difficult conversations, but is Jesus a burden or a gift? You see what I did there? The work of being an ally to trans folks in our communities is no more difficult to comprehend than Jesus's own identity. If churches can get their heads around talking about Jesus's complex identity and seemingly odd birth, then they can sure as heck address the need for a gender-neutral bathroom in their physical spaces and the use of pronouns wherever we are. After all, it's not Christology, right? So as we come to a close this Christmas, I want you to think about Jesus's trans identity, and to recognize the indwelling of the divine both within you and all of the identities that make you you, and to recognize the indwelling of the divine in those around us, especially in our trans siblings this season. Today, we celebrate that God transgressed, crossed the boundary between divinity and humanity. In this story of Advent and the Christmas season, we encounter a queer reality that defies both conventional reasoning and binary categories, and which prophetically presents a being in its complexity, in its seeming contradictions, and in its vulnerable fullness. In this story, we are confronted and celebrate a being in its fully confusing and yet beautiful fullness, Jesus, God among us, a mystery enfleshed. Amen. May we embrace the mystery that we enflesh. May we embrace the queer and trans realities that are embodied in and amongst one another. May it be so this Christmas season. Amen and amen.